Hi, today I'm gonna discuss about assignment 2. So first I'm gonna import my CSV file. I've done it already. Then I'm gonna import pandas as with alias name PD. Then I'm giving my data frame name as my DF, where I'm reading the table that I've imported and with a separator equal to comma because it's comma separated value. CSV file. Then I'm gonna display first three rows of my data frame. So for that, usually if you have to display first five rows, it's head. If you have to display first three rows or any number, you have to give inside the head the value. That's how it's displayed, like the first three rows. The next step I'm gonna do is you see the model column, I'm gonna delete it temporarily. So for that, I'm gonna use a method called drop with my model column name and axis equal to one is column. This is a temporary delete. That's why I'm not using anything in place equal to true. So to delete it permanently without using in place equal to true, what I do is like I give my data frame name and reassign the value of the drop to my data frame. That way it will delete the model column permanently without using in place equal to true. So when I check the columns present it doesn't show model column. Next, I have to delete row 1, 3, and 5. So 1 is 0, 2, and 4. So I'm gonna draw values. I gave the row values as list 0 to 4 and axis equal to 0 is nothing but rows in place equal to true because it's a permanent delete and I'm gonna display first four rows. So inside my head I gave value 4. Then I'm gonna calculate the mean of the range column. So for that, I'm doing my data frame followed by bracket notation range dot mean. This gives the range. This gives the mean of my range column. Next, I'm gonna count the number of occurrences. For that, I'm using my data frame type double equal to f. So this gives the values of uh, types, how many rows does the value of type has f value count. So when I run this code, it shows false as 898 and true as 49. So this tells us that 898 values does of type column doesn't have value f. Just 49 rows of a type column have f value. So next I'm gonna replace this f value with AAA. So when I run with, I'm using replace method. So it's a permanent change. That's why I'm using my data frame name followed by the column name. So when I run this and check for head, you see in the above, if you see the type value here, it's F for 67327 value. So if you see here, it's 6 and it got converted to triple A. Now I'm gonna check if we have any more F values. For that, I'm gonna use some method. So it shows inside my data frame, there is no type equal to F because we replaced it with triple A permanently. So the next step I'm gonna do is like inside cost, if you see there are brackets and dollar sign that I'm gonna remove it permanently. So for that, I'm giving my data frame name followed by the column name and string because it is string dot replace. This is a regex code for removing the brackets and the dollar sign. Regex equal to true. The it is regex. That's why we mentioned regex equal to true. We are we are replacing it with empty strings. So when I run this and run head, so all the special characters are being removed from the cost column and the data type is object. Next, to change the data type of the cost column, I'm gonna write as type method, which I gave int inside this. So this is gonna convert my cost column into integers. So when I run this code, dot head, it shows the data type as integer. Next, what I'm gonna do is calculate the average of cost column and then group I'll be grouping by each continent and display my mean cost. So for that I'm just displaying the head first and then I'm using group by for displaying by each continent and then I have to show the mean value of my cost column. That's why I gave cost dot mean. So these are my continent names. This is the cost. So by this you can know that Africa has the mean value of 54.457746. Antarctica has this. Next step is I'm gonna calculate the minimum, maximum, and standard deviation all in a single line. So for that, I use something called aggregate method. So for this, I write aggregate, and inside that, I give it as a list. I need min, max, and standard deviation. That's the reason I gave it. So when I run this code, I'll be getting continent values and then min, max, standard deviation of cost column for each continent. Then next I have to calculate the mean, standard deviation, and maximum value for range, value, and cost. So for that, I'm grouping by continent, and then I'm giving it as a list like the column names, range, value, and cost, and the aggregate values min, max, and standard deviation. So when I run this code, I'm getting it is grouped by continent, the range column, value column, cost column, minimum value, maximum value, standard deviation value. Next, what I'm gonna do is uh, I'm gonna see the data types of my all my data frames. So I see range, value, and cost are integers. So I have to draw a bar chart group by continent. So I'm gonna run this code. So here is my bar chart. So coming to code, it's group by continent. So the columns I'm gonna display is like range, value, cost of each continent, the mean values of those, and plot kind equal to bar is nothing but it's a bar plot. So if you look at the graph, it's continent Africa, Antarctica, Asia, Australia, Europe, North America, and South America. And the blue line here is like range, orange line is value, and green line is cost. It is same for all the continents. Next, what I'm gonna do is I'll count the number of occurrence of continents. So for that, I'm using method called value counts for my continent column. So in my entire data frame, North America is repeated 143 times, Australia is repeated 142 times, Africa is repeated 142 times, and so on. So display the percentage, I'll be using inside value count something called normalize equal to true. So what it does is it calculates the percentage. It's nothing but for North America, it's 143 by 143 plus 142 plus 142 plus 139 plus 135 plus 130 plus 116 and so on. So that's how this percentage is displayed, and the data type got uh, changed to float because these are percent values, like I would say decimal values. Next, to get the unique values of the column continent, I use method name called unique. And if I have to display the number of unique values, I use a method name called n unique. So 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there are 7 unique continents in my continent column. So I'm gonna use value counts method for my cost column. So, and in the in comments I wrote value counts is nothing but, so this gives the result like 35 cost values repeated 20 times, 56 cost values repeated 19 times, 73 cost values repeated 18 times in my entire data frame. So next, what I'm gonna do is plot a histogram for my cost column. So cost kind equal to hist is nothing but histogram. So by default, the bin value is 10. Bin is nothing but the uh, frequency of data frame. That's why this graph looks because the data is more, the frequency is less. The graph looks so messy. So I'm gonna change the bin value to 50. So in the next bar graph, you see the intervals has been changed to 50. That's why the graph looks more good and it makes more sense. Next, I'm gonna count the number of missing values in the zip code. So I'm gonna use is null method, and sum is nothing but it gives the sum of all null values. So it shows inside zip code I have 9 null values. Next, it's like next step is zip code and type, where these both column values should be null in the same row. That's why I'm using all. Axis equal to null. One is nothing but column dot sum. So it's 0. So there is no one single row where zip code and type are both 0 in the same row. So if I have to calculate in any row, then I use something called any, and axis equal to 1 is column, is null is null value. So it shows total null. So I'm gonna check if this is correct by giving is null and dot sum to my data frame. So here I can see there are 2 null values in my type, and in my zip code I have 9 values. Then uh, let's drop all the null values. There are total 936 rows. So for dropping all the null values, I use something called drop NA method. So and how equal to NA is nothing but no matter, it should be like in any row, if there is a null value, that row should be removed. That is what how equal to any means. And dot shape gives the shape of the data frame, like number of rows, it's 936, and number of columns is 7. Then what I'm gonna do is display the statistics of the type column value counts. And so I'm gonna display all the value counts of my type column, including like null missing values. So that's why I mentioned drop na equal to false. If it's equal to true, it does not display the missing values. So it displays none equal to 2. So I'm gonna replace this missing value with triplex in the next step. So when I run this code, for replacing it, I'll write something called method fillna, and I'm gonna replace with triplex. So when I run this, I can see in the output of value count like triplex equal to 2. Like nan value is being replaced by triplex. So next, uh, I'm gonna check my shape. So there are 947 rows and 7 columns. Then I'm gonna delete all the rows of missing values permanently. That's why I'm using in place equal to true. And I'm gonna check my shape again. So if you see, like, there are 936 rows now because there are total 11 missing values in my data frame. Now, what I'm gonna do is set my ID column as index. So for that, I use a method called set index ID, and it is permanent change. That's why I wrote in place equal to true. So I'm gonna check my head. Now ID has become the index of my data frame. Then I don't need this name ID here. That's why I'm gonna remove that. For that, I am writing my data frame. This is index column basically. So I wrote index. This is the name. That's why dot name equal to none. So in the next step, if I check what is head, I don't see ID name here. So that step is done. Now I want the value of 70th row and value equal value column. So that's why I'm using lock. So my data frame dot lock 70 is this row value, and the value is the column value. So when I run this code, I'll get answer as 24. Next, I'm gonna display my index column names and the shape of the current data frame. So I'm when I print this, so my index is basically ID no, so it's 20, 40, 60, 70, so on. And columns are like 6 because we removed index right now. So like ID column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And shape as mentioned, we don't have the null values and there are only 6 rows. So next step is I'm gonna reset my index, and in place equal to 2 is like permanent change. So my index will be now back to the index values like 0, 1, 2, 3, and stuff, and my ID comes back in place. But when I check my data frame, my ID column is showing it as index. That's why what I in the next step, what I've done is like change the index name here to ID. And when I run this code, so my index is right now from 0 to 936, and step 1 is nothing but the incremental value like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, that way. And if you look at my columns, previously it was index here. I changed it to ID in this step. So ID, range, value, type, zip code, cost, comment. So number of shapes will like number of columns right now will be 7 because index like ID is back to its position. So I'm gonna use describe method to view the statistics of my data frame. So it's basically like the numerical columns. So my count, mean, standard deviation, minimum value, 25 percentile, 50 percentile, and 75 percentile, and maximum value it displays. And then I have to show first row and third column. So it's basically count and value. So 936 should be displayed. For that, I'm gonna use log. So I'm gonna use count in here, comma, the column value here. So 936, the expected result. Now I'm gonna sort the value counts results of the continent column. So I wrote something called continents value counts dot sort values. So this sorting is nothing but uh, it's an ascending order, but based on the value counts right here. If you see 115, 130, 134, 137, 138, 141, and 141. Next comes is I want to sort it again according to alphabetical order. So I'm gonna sort the index of the value count. So based on that, if I run this code, you see this is set in alphabetical order right now. It's based on my value counts. I'm sorting based on index. So next I'm gonna display rows 1357. For that, I'm just running my data frame. So rows 1357 is nothing but 0, 2, 4, and 6 in a single command. So for that, I'm again using log. I'm giving this as a list. So when I run this code, I'm displaying all the column values of rows 1357. Next, what I'm gonna do is I need type and continent for the first 7 rows. So I'm giving my data frame name followed by bracket notation inside list, type and continent, and head equal to 7. Head is 7. So these are first 7 row values of my type and continent. Then I'm gonna retrieve the value column where zip code equal to IMGMFI. So I'm again using log where my data frame followed by zip code value equal to this thing, and I need to display the value column. So when I run this code, I don't see anything. So this means there is no value column where there is no zip code value equal to IMG5. That's what about my presentation. So in this presentation, I've known how to draw histogram, bar graph. I have known how to uh, drop the null values, replace the null values. I have known like how to check the unique values in the columns and number of unique values in the columns, and then how bin comes in picture, how to replace null values, how to how to drop the null values, how to count the number of null values, how to replace, like rename the null values, and what else? Like, yeah, like how to set index and how to use lock, especially, which is very helpful for the rest of my assignments. Thank you.